Okay, hello everybody. And on behalf of patients and patient organisations, I'd like to welcome you all to our very first ELF Living with Sleep and Breathing Disorders conference. And I'm going to hand over to the director of the European Lung Foundation, Pippa Powell, who's going to go through some of the different aspects of the day.
Thanks, Claire, and welcome everybody to this first Sleep and Breathing conference. We're really delighted to see so many people coming in from so many different countries, and you'll hear a little bit later how many people have signed up for this conference. So as Claire said, I'm Pippa Powell and I'm Director of the European Lung Foundation. We have a really international audience here today, so I would like first to draw your attention to the Wordly app that we have, which is here to help you if your first language isn't English. So the Wordly app will provide translations and captions, and the link is available in the chat. And if you click on the link, you should be able to access the Wordly translation. We hope they'll really help your understanding of this conference, but the translation won't be perfect. So please bear with us on that. So a little bit more about the European Lung Foundation. So we are an organisation that is led by patients, and we work across the globe to try and bring together patients, the public and healthcare professionals to improve lung health. So we focus on advancing diagnosis and treatment and care for lung conditions. And one way that we do this is through patient conferences like the one you're attending today. What this conference aims to do is to give you a chance to listen to experts and ask questions. But it's not just about learning from professionals, it's also about learning from other patients like yourself to share experience and learn how to better manage lung conditions. So since 2021, the European Lung Foundation has been hosting these conferences, and a lot of patients have told us how useful these conferences are in helping them feel less alone and more connected. It's a really great opportunity to see how dedicated healthcare professionals are into improving the treatment and care for people living with sleep and breathing disorders. And we also know there will be healthcare professionals in the audience today who will also want to learn from patients about what is important to them. We do work in partnership with the European Respiratory Society, and I'm really pleased as an introduction to this conference today to play a video from the current European Respiratory Society President, Silke Ryan, and she would like to welcome you to the conference. So by video, over to Silke.
Hello everyone, my name is Silke Ryan. I'm from Dublin, Ireland, and I'm the current president of the European Respiratory Society. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you today as I'm attending another conference in Turkey, but I am absolutely delighted to see this first ever conference for patients with sleep-related breathing disorders happening. And I'm very grateful to the European Lung Foundation for the organization. For respiratory sleep specialists like myself, people living with sleep apnea and related disorders are in the center and focus of everything we do. In our clinical practice, in our research, in our guideline development, in our training of junior doctors and so on. And frankly, my clinic would be pretty lonely without you at the other side of the table. To tackle the enormous burden of sleep disorders, to raise awareness of the same among the public and among policymakers, and to drive further research into innovative solutions, we need to work closely together. Patients, physicians, societies, organizations, and any other stakeholders, and the European Lung Foundation and the European Respiratory Society are key for bringing us all together. I am immensely dedicated to this task, and I'm looking forward to working with you all for our common goals. I wish you a wonderful and successful conference. Bye-bye.
So our co-chair is Luca Roberti, and he's been a really pivotal patient through over the last few years in my time at European Lung Foundation, really driving forward all activities in sleep and trying to encourage patients across Europe to raise the voice in patient advocacy for sleep and breathing disorders. So Luca, thank you for everything you do, and over to you as co-chair for the day.
Okay, thank you, Pippa. Hello, everyone. I am Luca. It is nice to meet you all. I started therapy about 10 years ago, and I am also CPAP user and founder and president of the Italian Sleep Apnea Patient Association. I am member also of the ELF Sleep Patient Advisory Group, who have helped to organize the conference alongside our colleague from European Respiratory Society. If you are interested in joining our patient advisory group to help improve awareness of and treatment for sleep condition, please get in touch. We know sleep and breathing disorders affect so many people worldwide. We speak about 1 billion. That's what makes this conference so important. It provides an opportunity to deepen our understanding, explore a way to manage this condition, and learn about treatments and the latest research. We had an incredible response of our conference, with over 416 people participant from more than 57 countries. That's amazing. This event is also a great opportunity to connect with others. We want it to be as interactive as possible, so please say hello in the chat, share where you are joining from, and ask questions. While speakers can't address personal cases, don't hesitate to ask. There's no such thing as silly question. Our goal is for you to gain the knowledge you need. If you are on the social media, especially on X and Twitter, be sure to share your thought using the hashtag ELF Sleep and Breathing. And over to my co-chair, Professor Sofia Schiza.
Good afternoon. It is my privilege. Can you hear me? Okay. It is my privilege to co-chair this first virtual patient conference. I would like, first of all, to pose a huge thanks to Claire Williams, to Luca Roberti, and all the patients, and of course to Pippa Powell, and mostly to our current president of ERS, Silke Ryan, because I know that she's pushing hard to increase patients' advocacy. As I used to say, in the end of the day, we are here for our patients. So it is highly important to work all together. I am, as you know, the majority of you, the current head of ERS Assembly 4 Sleep, ERS Assembly 4 devoted to sleep and breathing disorders. I am professor of respiratory and sleep medicine in the University of Crete in Greece. And one of our main initiatives for the current assembly mandate is to work together with all of you and increase patients' advocacy and patients' representation within ELF and DRS, and also beyond, because we need strong collaboration with other scientific societies that hold patients as well and work with patients like European Sleep Respiratory Society and the Assembly of National Sleep Societies. Today we are fortunate to have highly knowledgeable speakers who are leaders in the field of sleep and breathing disorders, and deeply also committed to patient engagement. They actively encourage patient involvement in their work and welcome our input. We also want to learn from patients, and throughout the morning, this afternoon, we will hearing directly from those who have sleep and breathing disorders. Please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A button that you can see in the bottom line of your screen. And remember, there are no such silly questions. You can also like questions that you'd most like to answer by clicking the thumbs up icon, and this helps bring them to attention and reduce duplicated questions. There is the intention to cope with all the questions in the end of each of the 3 sessions. But also, if there are remaining questions, this also will be answered by our distinguished speakers, and we'll upload it in the e-learning platform along with the webinar. The first session will be chaired by myself and also Luca Roberti. The second session will be chaired by the current Secretary of Group 402, Athanasia Pataka, with Luca Roberti, and the third session will be chaired by Dries Testelman, Professor Dries Testelman, the current group chair of 402, along with Luca Roberti. And this way, all the assembly officers will be engaged in this initiative. And also a huge thank to our early career member representative Matteo Siciliano for all the actions that he made for advertise these events in the social media as well, and in total for his hard work and collaboration with ELF and with us, obviously. So the first session will look at the impact of sleep and breathing disorders. And in the end, as I mentioned previously, we will have the questions, then a short break. And after this, we will have the second session, and again, dealing in the end with the questions. And after again a short break, we will move to the final third session. Without any further delay, I will pass again my microphone to Luca Roberti, to my co-chair, in order to explain some of the practical aspects of the day. Luca.
Yeah, thank you, Sofia. This is a webinar style event also so attendees can only see the speaker, chairs, and host. Participants are muted, but you can participate in the chat and through the Q&A. We are recording the event, and recording will be made available on the ELF website after the event. Please write your question in a Q&A board, and we will try to answer as many as we can in the time we have. Those not answered, we will try to get answers from the speakers after the event and put these on our website for you to access after the event. Some of our speakers have included polls in their presentation. We are going to try a poll right now so you can see how it works. For this poll, we would like to say how much knowledge you have about sleep and breathing disorder. We start now. Yeah, very interested. We have 4 for 20%, or 5 for 16, 6 to 12, 7 to 6, and 8 to 8%. Thank you. Thank you, Sofia.
Okay, thank you so much, Luca, for this. And now it's my great honor to introduce, you know her better than you know myself, obviously, Claire Williams. She's working hard, really hard and really efficient for patients initiative in general, but she worked hard, very, very hard, for make it happen, this first virtual conference of patients with sleep breathing disorders. And I think this will be the start of numerous others. And Claire, thank you for this, and thank you for allow us also to collaborate with you and to support you in every way that we can. And it's a promise that we maintain this for the future. So Claire will speak to us about the hidden consequences of sleep and breathing disorders, and we are looking forward to hearing you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Before I start, I'm going to see if we can show a short video of some patients talking about the different symptoms that they had.
Kun minä nelikymppisenä sairastuin astmaan, unettomuuteen, levottomiin jalkoihin, verenpainetautiin, krooniseen poskiontelotulehdukseen, fibromyalgiaan ja näitä seuranneeseen kirjavaan joukkoon erilaisia liitännäissairauksia, ei sinulla mitään masennusta ole. Sinulla on uniapnea. Mitä? Sehän on vanhojen miesten tauti. Eikä naiset kuorssaa. En minä ainakaan. Päivittelin asiaa miehelle kotona. Noin, hän sanoi. Kyllä sinusta ääntä lähtee, unissasikin. Kun en ottanut sellaista kuuleviin korviini, mies laittoi salaa yöllä puhelimensa ääninauhurin päälle ja soitti äänityksen minulle. Ihan hirmuinen, raastava, jyrisevä mekkala. Minusta. Vaan enpä tiennyt, että vaikeuteni olivat vasta alussa. Auto törmäsi moottoritien kaistojen välissä lumipenkkaan. Olin nukahtanut rattiin. Pahasti järkyttyneenä varasin ajan keuhkopolille.
Alors, j'ai été diagnostiquée emphysème en 2001, quand j'avais 37 ans, et j'ai juste eu un inhalateur. Jusqu'en 2017, où, comme je m'essoufflais de plus en plus, je suis allée faire une réadaptation respiratoire. Mais je n'avais pas de souci d'apnée du sommeil. Je m'endormais assez souvent au volant, mais comme je travaillais beaucoup, j'avais 2 travails, donc je mettais ça sur le compte de la fatigue, et donc j'avais jamais consulté à ce sujet-là. Et donc quand je suis arrivée à la clinique, déjà on m'a dit que je désaturais beaucoup, donc qu'il allait falloir me mettre l'oxygène. On m'a dit, est-ce que vous voulez faire une polysomnographie? Oh ben j'ai dit, tant que je suis là, mais ok. Et heureusement, parce que en fait, ben, je faisais des apnées du sommeil. En dépistant beaucoup plus, parce que si on m'avait pas posé la question, je sais pas si de moi-même j'aurais consulté, vu que je ne pensais pas du tout faire d'apnée. Et en fait, c'est souvent qu'on entend autour de nous, oh ben il ronfle, oh ben on fait chambre à part. Et en fait, au lieu de dire ça, il faudrait aussi penser à consulter un ronfle, parce que des fois ça peut amener à un diagnostic en consultant directement à un médecin.
Disons que le premier contact, suite à l'accident, ils n'ont pas du tout parlé de l'apnée du sommeil. Ça a été reconnu simplement 20 ans après que je faisais de l'apnée du sommeil. Mon médecin m'a envoyé chez un pneumologue, le pneumologue m'a fait le contrôle de la polysomnographie et m'a fait appareiller de suite. Alors, l'impact, c'est que j'étais très souvent agressif. Je faisais aussi un peu dépression aussi, dès qu'il y a quelque chose qui n'allait pas. Comment dirais-je aussi, je dormais très très mal, toujours agité, et j'ai fait de l'hypertension artérielle, j'ai eu pas mal de soucis là-dessus, donc j'ai été obligé d'avoir des traitements. C'était très très dur pendant, disons, les 20 ans, j'étais obligé de suivre un traitement qui, si j'avais eu la PPC depuis le départ, j'aurais pas eu tous ces traitements-là, quoi.
So I'd like to thank all of the patients that took part in these videos. I think they're really enlightening. So I'm now going to move over to my presentation. So I'm just going to reshare my screen again. So hopefully you will be able to see my presentation. Is that brilliant? So I'm looking at some of the hidden consequences of sleep and breathing disorders, and just a little bit about me, first of all. I work here at the European Lung Foundation in patient involvement and engagement. And as part of that, I look after our sleep patient advisory group. We're a group of patients and patient representatives who help researchers and clinicians to take account patient perspectives in their activities. But I'm also a CPAP user. I have obstructive sleep apnea, OSA, and this is what I look like when I go to bed at night. So I know the issues and the problems associated with having a sleep and breathing disorder and of using this equipment every single night. So sleep and breathing disorders, there's quite a range of different disorders, but the most common one is obstructive sleep apnea by far, which is also the one that I have. There are some other conditions, and some people can have more than one sleep and breathing condition at the same time, which I would imagine would be really unfortunate. And what they all do is they all make it hard to breathe normally when you're asleep. So people with obstructive sleep apnea may stop breathing many times an hour in the night. And clearly this is going to have quite a significant impact on the body. So if these sleep and breathing problems are not diagnosed or are not treated properly, then as you can see, they can lead to a wide range of some often quite serious health issues, with the most common being cardiovascular problems such as high blood pressure, strokes, and heart disease. And because of that, it's really, really important that people are able to get the right diagnosis and the right treatment for their condition to alleviate the risk of some of these health conditions happening. So we already know a lot from research about how sleep and breathing problems affect your body and your mind. But we don't know so much about how these conditions affect your social life, for example, or your daily experiences. And we've also heard from many patients about some of the issues that they've had. For example, people say that they were waiting a long time to get a diagnosis, and this got worse during the pandemic and hasn't really got back to normal. So for this presentation, we wanted to find out a little bit more about some of these concerns. So we sent out a survey to people who had been diagnosed with a sleep and breathing disorder. And in this presentation, I'm going to share some of what we found. So we had a really good response to the survey. We had a range of ages. Just over half were female, and that doesn't match the people who are diagnosed because it's much more likely to be diagnosed in men. But we also know that women are more likely to complete surveys, so that's probably why we found that. And just over 80% of the people who replied had obstructive sleep apnea, which is, of course, the most common type. So the first thing we asked was, what led to you getting a diagnosis? So what were the symptoms that you had that made you go to your health professional to seek help? And the most common symptom was loud snoring. And I know that that was my overriding symptom. My snoring could be heard through walls and floors. And I think it's really important to remember that snoring doesn't just affect the individual, but also members of the household as well, because it can be very difficult to sleep even in the room next door to a heavy snorer. But we also had people say that they were feeling very tired during the day, they were waking up unrefreshed. So when we asked people how long it took for them first seeking help to getting a diagnosis, just over half said it took less than 6 months, which is pretty good. But we still had a lot of people saying that it took a lot longer. And around 14% said it took over 2 years. And that was more common in women, particularly because women don't always fit the typical picture of somebody who might have a sleep and breathing disorder. And we had people say that they went to the doctor for years and were not taken seriously. So I think something needs to change there. Once people had received a diagnosis, then it was generally quicker for them to then get treatment than it had been for them waiting for a diagnosis. But we still had some people who waited a long time. And some people actually went out and bought equipment privately because they were worried about having their sleep apnea untreated. And those delays could have quite a significant impact on people. So over 50% of people said that their sleep-related problems got worse, their snoring got louder, they felt more tired. And people also had some cognitive problems as well, such as brain fog. We also asked about driving, and over 80% of people who said that they or their clinician had told their driving authority about their diagnosis said it did not affect their license. But for those people who were affected, the impact could really be quite serious. People were losing their licenses. That sometimes meant that they ended up losing their jobs. And as somebody pointed out, the most dangerous person on the roads is somebody who has not been diagnosed, not someone who's had a diagnosis and is making an effort to get treatment and get well. Interestingly, 93% of people who responded were using a positive airway pressure device to manage their sleep apnea. And we know that generally quite a few people who start this treatment don't continue it. I think it's important to see here that whereas over 50% found their PAP machine effective almost straight away, there were a lot of people who didn't get the instant result. I know I didn't. I was hoping that I might leap out of bed after a refreshing 8 hours sleep on my first night, and that didn't happen. And I think the message there is that sometimes you need to persist. And even if you're not getting a miracle effect from it, it's important to remember that you're reducing your risk of some of those health conditions that we talked about earlier. We know that PAP can be a challenge. These are the challenges that people told us that they had from using their PAP machine. It was very hard to get used to the device, for example, and they often woke up at night several times. The most common challenge was a dry mouth, and that's something that I experienced. And just some suggestions for people, the things that I've done to help me, is speak to your clinic about getting a humidifier for your PAP machine, because that will then introduce misted air into the hose, and you can even get a heated hose to help with that, and that helps to moisten the mouth. We can't name brand names here, but if you search the internet for dry mouth melts, it will come up with something that looks a little bit like a sharper image of the middle picture, and you put those on the inside of your cheek at night and they dissolve. And also I find using a lip balm or petroleum jelly quite thickly at night before I put my mask on is also helpful. Speaking of masks, masks are a big problem for many of the people who responded to our survey. And it was more likely women, because many of the masks used for these machines are actually designed to fit the male face. And women's faces are often different. and leaking masks can be a real problem, making lines in your face, for example. Some clinics will fit you a mask sitting up, and then when you lay down to go to sleep at night, the position changes. So if you're having a mask fitted, ask your clinic if you can try it lying down. Sex and relationships can be a real issue for people using PAP treatment. As somebody said there, it's like a third person sleeping in the bed. And people who are single were worried about introducing this machine to potential new partners. So overall, people had a real love-hate relationship with their PAP machine. They knew that it was working, they knew that it was doing them some good, but it can be a real burden to wear. So finally, we asked people what their hopes for the future were. And this is our wish list. This is the wish list of people with sleep and breathing disorders across Europe. We want better awareness of the condition, quicker diagnosis, especially in women, younger people, people who don't have many symptoms. We want better advice and psychological support on using PAP. And if it doesn't work for you, what are the alternatives? We want better masks. Custom fit masks would be a dream. And some new treatment options. So those with as effective as PAP, but not having to wear a machine strapped to your face. And ultimately, a cure would be fantastic. I'm going to finish my presentation with a poll. And it's from this wish list here, from our hopes for the future. If you've got a sleep and breathing disorder, then please let us know, what is your top wish list? Just bear with me and I'll go back to the poll. So here we go. So hopefully you'll see that on your screen. So of these options, which one do you hope for the most? Wait for a few more people to answer. Got a few more answers coming in. Oh, I'll end the poll there and share the results. So that's really interesting. So the top answer there is new treatment options, but also closely followed behind is more support for PAP users. So I think some of the issues that we've talked about there are really pertinent. And I shared this list with a conference earlier this month on for clinicians and researchers and pharmaceutical representatives. So I hope that they will have taken note of our concerns. So thank you all very much. I will hand back over to the chairs.
Thank you so much, Claire, for this wonderful presentation. Thank you for putting together this questionnaire. I think that the questionnaire has to circulate it more in other countries as well in order to receive more responses. But you're already triggering so much discussion in the chat from patients with sharing experience and wishes and needs as well. So this is highly important. Please submit all the questions you have, and also all the experience that you have in this chat and in the Q&A bottom as well. And also it is important that awareness is needed more within the physicians, within the general practitioners, within the health system as well, because we don't need delays up to 10 years, as I saw in the chat, in order to receive a proper diagnosis and a proper treatment, but also to overcome other issues as well. Hopefully new technologies will help also in this direction. And after this, and without further delay, I will introduce the next speaker, Professor Athanasia Patakas. He is a professor of respiratory and sleep medicine in the University of Thessaloniki, Greece. Greece has a strong representation until now in the panel. And she will, and the current secretary of Group 402 sleep breathing disorders, a clinical one, and she will refer to sleep and breathing disorders and driving issues. Athanasia, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would first like to thank the organizing committee and the European Lung Foundation for me being here. I'm really, really happy to be here to this first patient congress about sleep and breathing disorders. And I work in Greece. I am a respiratory doctor, and I am also a sleep specialist, and I work with patients, especially with sleep apnea. And we all have patients that suffer from this disease, and also we have friends and many colleagues who also suffer from sleep apnea, and some members of our families also. So it's a very frequent disease, and we are really, really happy to listen to all the patients and their problems, because they really, really help us to work with them. So I'll try to share my screen. And so my presentation will be for sleep and breathing disorders and driving. And Claire made a really good introduction, because I think it's really important for a patient with a sleep and breathing disorder how to drive, and it has an impact in all the community. And I will begin with drowsy driving. What is it? It's driving while sleepy or fatigued. So drowsy driving is responsible for a significant percentage of road traffic accidents. However, it doesn't receive nearly as much as attention as drunk driving. So as you can see, 95% of drivers say that drowsy driver is a major threat to safety. And of course, when someone is sleepy, apart from the danger of falling asleep behind the wheel, also he or she has serious problems with attention, with judgment, with decision making, coordination, vigilance, and reaction time. And you can see that the drivers who haven't slept in more than 20 hours have the same driving ability as someone with a bodily alcohol content of a drunk driver. So it's really important to have a good night's sleep. And drowsy driving is more likely to cause a crash. And you can see that almost 21% of fatal crashes every year are attributed to drowsiness, and they kill around 6,000 people every year. And the injuries are many, more than 50,000 in the United States. And the cost is huge, more than $12 million. So what are the signs of drowsy driving? That it is very important for a driver to know, but also for the passengers to know, is when someone yawns frequently, are unable to keep their eyes open, when your thoughts wander and take you off the focus of the road, when you can't remember driving the last few miles, when you are impatient, you are in a hurry, you are grouchy, you end up too close to cars in front of you, when you miss the signs, or you drive past your turn, when you drive into the other lane, or you catch yourself nodding off, or you have trouble keeping your head up. Sleep disorders like sleep disorder breathing, but also insomnia or circadian rhythm disorders restrict and interrupt your sleep. So we all need around 7 to 9 hours of restorative sleep each night to be able to function well, both physically and mentally. So healthy sleep maintains your brain healthy and your reaction time. So it keeps you sharp and alert, whatever life's throw to you. And untreated sleep disorders can cause excessive daytime sleepiness or tiredness during the day, even though you think you have slept all night. So this can cause impaired or distracted driving, reduce the reaction time, increase the risk of fatal crashes. And obstructive sleep apnea is a common long-term condition that has many symptoms, as Claire showed you before, and it also can cause many health problems, and of course sleepiness, depression, as you heard in the first video, and also irritability are also symptoms of this disease. And patients with obstructive sleep apnea have an increased risk of motor vehicle accidents, around 2 or 3 times than patients who do not suffer from the disease. And it seems that the risk is higher than that of alcoholism. So people with sleep apnea have a higher risk of accidents. However, the studies don't have shown that the risk can vary. And this is because even if 2 people have the same level of sleep apnea, their symptoms, like the sleepiness during the day, can be different. So for that reason, in 2014, the European Union made new rules about whether people with sleep apnea are fit to drive. And you all know that sleep apnea is a serious sleep disorder, and there are people who have severe disease. You may have 30 or more breathing pauses during per hour when you sleep. However, there are many drivers. You can see here that 26 to 36% of commercial drivers on the road have sleep apnea. However, only 5 to 15% of them receive effective treatment. And professional drivers are not the only one who have the risk of drowsy driving. All drivers are at risk if they're undiagnosed or if they remain untreated. So how can we identify who is at risk? And because I'm pretty sure that you are going to ask this question, the screening of driver for possible sleep apnea differ between countries, and they are different between professionals and individual drivers. However, because sleepy driving and, of course, obstructive sleep apnea is a rather common disease, there was a report, a directive from the European Union in 2014, and you can see this proposed questionnaire in order to screen for sleep apnea. And you can see that the questions are rather easy to answer, especially if someone is sleeping next to you, about if you doze while driving, if you have witnessed apneas, if you had a serious accident, if your breathing stops, if you snore loudly, and if you have other comorbidities like hypertension. And of course, in that questionnaire, the last question is about the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. That is a questionnaire that you can see it in my screen, that with 8 simple questions evaluates how sleepy someone is, but it's not very specific for sleep apnea only. So if someone scores more than 10 in the first questionnaire, then he or she should have a more specific medical advice. And here you can see the page of the European Union on the driver license, and you can see the minimum medical requirements that differ between countries. And of course, for the renewal of the license, driving license, the age of the renewal is different between countries. However, the European Union says that if you are a professional driver, you must have a medical checkup every 5 years. But this also depends on the country. So the screening for sleep apnea before receiving or renewing a driver license is based on these questionnaires or a short list of measurements that is different between countries. And if the screening reveals a high suspicion of sleep apnea, a medical advice should be required. And of course, a sleep study is important, it's essential for the diagnosis of sleep apnea. So if the diagnosis is made, the treatment of sleep apnea results in a significant decrease of the risk of motor vehicle accidents, and the driving performance improves significantly after 1 to 7 days of CPAP treatment, and the benefits of treatment on driving performance depend on how regular you use your treatment. So these are the current practice of the suggested by the European Respiratory Society for advising on fitness to drive for all patients. So if there are no previous accidents, you should have a clinical examination. The questionnaire that I showed you in the previous slide, and your doctor should assess other relevant diseases. And if everything is good, you could have your driving license or renew it. If you had previous accidents and they were sleepiness related, or you have suspicions of sleep apnea, then there should be a search of risk factors, of drugs, of possible sleep apnea or other disease with associated with sleepiness, and of course, a referral to a sleep specialist. And if someone is suspected with sleep apnea, treatment should start according to guidelines. And if excessive daytime sleepiness exists, or there are relations of accidents with excessive daytime sleepiness, the release of the driving license shouldn't be allowed until the verification of treatment effectiveness and compliance. And if there is a known sleep apnea, of course, someone should use effectively the treatment in order to have their driving license. And of course, in order to improve the identification of the patients with sleep apnea and of course to treat them in order to reduce the accidents on the roads because of sleep apnea, there should be a collaboration of different components. And of course, we should promote the diagnosis for sleep apnea. We shouldn't wait for 10 years in order to have a diagnosis. And also, we should engage different relevant employees, like those who employ the professional drivers, and also the education of the relevant parties, like the drivers, the clinicians, and the industry itself, and also the regulations of each country should be very strict on this issue. And of course, there is a technology, because someone could ask about that it's improving. So there is technology to detect sleepiness at will, and also the new model of cars have steering wheel movement monitoring systems. But if you have a constant sleepiness, these don't really help. So there are two golden rules: whether you should, whether you have or not sleep apnea. You are the one responsible to decide whether you're fit to drive or not. So it doesn't matter if you have sleep apnea, if you're up all night because you have a baby, or you are with your friends, or you're watching a film. If you are likely to be sleepy at the point where your driving could be impaired, then you should not drive, because if you do, you're breaking the law. So, and also if your GP or your consultant or any other medical professional tells you that you should not drive, you must not do so. So if you do, you're also breaking the law. So in summary, in order to understand driving risk and sleep apnea, first of all, the number of breathing pauses that you have during sleep, the so-called apnea-hypopnea index, does not by itself show you if you are safe to drive. You may have a low apnea-hypopnea index, but you may be very sleepy. So feeling very sleepy during the day is the main reason why people with sleep apnea have higher risk of car accidents. So this sleepiness can also be caused by other things other than sleep apnea. And if there is a doubt about how sleepy you feel during the day, especially if you drive for work, you should ask, and you should tell about this to your doctor, because you probably need more objective tests for sleepiness, like this more advanced test, like the maintenance of wakefulness test. And finally, if you're using your CPAP machine regularly and as prescribed, can greatly lower your risk for accidents. And once your treatment is working well and you are no longer sleepy, you can usually start driving again. So this is all from me. And of course, I will be very happy to answer your questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Athanasia. I think, Claire, now we have the video from ERS presidents.
We're going to go to the question and answer session first, and then we'll show the video as we go into the break.
Okay, perfect. I start with one question for Athanasia. You believe that the European regulation after 10 years, because today is 10 years, need to be revised? Medical legal experts have advised us that it should be revised to ensure better application and harmonization. What do you think, Athanasia?
I completely agree. And there, of course, from the side of the European Respiratory Society, there is a renewed statement about this aspect. However, I really believe that, and this is the reason why I showed you in my presentation the site of the European Union for the driving license, because of course there is a directive, rules from the European Union about this issue, and all the countries should follow these rules. However, if you go to each country, there are differences, and I really believe that, of course, with the new technology, things may be even easier to diagnose sleep apnea. But I really believe that the rules must be more strict, because we are really strict about alcohol, but we are not about sleepiness. And as I showed you, being sleepy is like being drunk almost. So I really think that the rules should be nationally, and I think in all the European Union more strict about that.
Athanasia, is another question posed for you. We have to keep our mind to chat as well, because many questions are posed on chat, but this is also fine. This is an interesting discussion taking place there. From the patient perspective, are there any tool like a short questionnaire that patients can use to assess our own wakefulness? And to further expand this, are there any huge differences between males and females related to acceptance and to sleepiness as well? Short, I know that the answer is not short, but...
It's difficult with a question. I don't know if Claire wants to add something on it because of the answers of the questionnaire. But of course, sometimes it's dangerous to give an answer about if there is a questionnaire or a tool to assess sleepiness, because sometimes it's a bit difficult to assess sleepiness, because people, especially professional drivers, really don't just hide their symptoms sometimes because of work. And I believe that the employers should be really strict about this part. However, there are questionnaires and tools like the one that I showed you in my presentation that can assess sleepiness. Of course, the Epworth sleepiness scale is not it's not the best, and that's why I also put that those signs of feeling sleepy or sleepy of sleepy driving in my presentation, because the driver sometimes doesn't admit the problem, but people who are next to him understand the problem. So sometimes I think it's good to be real to ourselves and accept the problem, because I also have in my family people who have sleep apnea. The problem is, first of all, to accept it, to accept that you have the problem, because many people have problem to that. And I believe that in the future, the technology would help us with more objective tools that can alert us that something is wrong. But up until now, there are in some cars, in some expensive, or not very expensive cars, some tools that probably will wake up the driver, but they're not very safe to use if you are always sleepy. So there are questionnaires about sleepiness, however, they're not objective. And I think that that's why I said that in the end, that each one of us should be responsible for himself and also for all the people who are around him, because a traffic accident doesn't affect only ourselves, but all the other people around us. So I think it's really important to understand ourselves and see what's happening with sleepiness, because sleepiness, even if someone wears the CPAP and doesn't sleep for many hours during the night, will also cause a problem in his driving or her driving. So of course.
So it depends on the patient that you have in front of you. Because in the chat there are many patients referring that even though they end up with a CPAP, they don't feel any difference. So
Yes.
the issue is what we are doing as a sleep specialist in order to extract what is the main problem of the patients that we have in front of us and to discuss this issue with him or her, and then follow up closely about the outcomes and the results. Because we alertness, it's different from fatigue that females express, and it's different, and there are variations between patients as well. It depends on what the patient feels as alertness or as a quality of life that improved after treatment. So I don't think so that one questionnaire will solve the problem, but it's based on the needs of the patient, and we have to hear the needs in order to apply the specific treatment based on an accurate diagnosis, because it's not only PAP. There are huge other treatment approaches nowadays. But I think that Claire or Luca may have a better answer for this as well.
I have just one question to Claire. Were there any significant difference in the survey responses between people from different countries, for example, regarding delays in diagnosis and difficulty in renewing driver license?
Yeah, we saw a few changes. Certainly in Greece, Athanasia and Sophia, people seem to wait less time for their diagnosis compared to the UK. Unfortunately, we seem to be lagging behind a little bit in the UK. In Italy, people told us that when they told the driving authority, or the driving authority was told about their diagnosis, they then had to renew their license more frequently. And it was really hard for them to get evidence from their clinicians that their sleep problem was being effectively treated. Whereas in the UK, people seem to be able to get that evidence quite quickly. But then when they sent it to our driving authority here, it could be months and months before they got their license back. And I think it's also worth remembering that in some countries, people in Belgium, for example, told us that they had to comply with CPAP treatment for a minimum number of hours per night in order to get it funded. And that was really difficult when they were trying to get used to their treatment, because they were often spending many hours lying awake wearing the machine in order to get it funded. So definitely some differences across Europe.
Yeah. We know the worldwide the normal is 4 hours for night for 70% all, but in Italy we have good news. Probably it's canceled the problem with the hour. But we have the last question for Athanasia from Anna from the Q&A. It is correct that this is a self-regulated issue. What I mean is, in the UK, it relies on drivers to inform the DVLA, is the authority, that they are medically unfit. Should there be a duty on Dr. DVLA to step in someone is clearly unfit?
This is a huge problem. I was going to talk about that, because it should be, and I think that and it also depends on the country, and also to the personal I forgot the word in English. Τα προσωπικά δεδομένα, Sophia, how is it?
Personal rights, personal protection,
the protection of the personal rights. So sometimes it's difficult. It's not very clear by the law of each country how can a doctor be involved in that. I believe that we should, but it should be defined more carefully. And we have all faced this problem. I think for the DVLA there are some rules that the doctor could say that they could not give them the approval that they are non-sleepy so that can renew their license. But for example, if you say you're not sleepy, sometimes we cannot prove objectively because the test about objectively proving that you are sleepy or not sleepy are more difficult to do, and more time. We will spend more time than the diagnosis of sleep apnea. So we don't have the way to objectively understand if someone's sleepy or not, and we depend on what they say. So I think this is one of the most important things, that we cannot ensure all the other people that someone is fit to drive if they don't really take the responsibility of themselves. This is the problem, because sometimes there are even professional drivers that are sleepy and they don't wear their CPAP, and sometimes we have to say to the driver, to the professional, but she shouldn't have his license, but we can revoke the license as a doctor. That's the problem. So I'm not sure what's going on all over Europe, but for example in Greece, it's a problem. We can't do that. I'm not sure if Sophia has a different opinion, but it's a huge problem, because it's the personal the protection of the personal rights that we cannot really say to the to someone to the how can I say it?
Yeah, it's a multi-parametric
Yes.
situation, Athanasia. The thing is that the health systems has to hold responsibility also, not only the patients, because the patients have to work also, and they have to secure their work. They are afraid about losing not only the protection of the personal data, but how they will secure their work as well. So we need to integrate all these issues to the health national systems as well, and try about a homogeneous approach. I don't know, Claire, if we have time for further discussion for the session one, because I think that we are running out of time.
We are. We will have 2 more Q&A sessions later, so do keep asking your questions, but I think we should go to the break now. I'm going to suggest...
The only thing that I want to mention is the importance of one colleague from Spain that joining on and mentioned about sleep breathing disorders in COPD patients. It's not only obstructive sleep apnea, it's patients with bronchiectasis, it's patients with ILDs and sleep breathing disorders, are patients with COPD and asthma and sleep breathing disorders. So I think that the room here opens, this conference opens a huge window for many upcoming ones, maybe devoted in different sleep breathing disorders and entities. This is a point from and thank you for all this activity in the chat. I think it's marvelous. Claire.
Okay. We start now the break. We come back in 10 minutes. Okay, we come back, and now we start the session 2, and the current treatment for sleep and breathing disorders.
Pahasti järkyttyneenä varasin ajan keuhkopolille. Nuori lääkäri oli napakka. Nyt pitää oikeasti ottaa käyttöön uniapnea-laite, hän totesi. Kirjoitti vielä varmuudeksi potilaspapereihini, että minua on ohjeistettu, eikä sairaala olisi enää vastuussa, jos kieltäytyisin hoidosta ja ajelisin autoa rattiin uinahdellen. Sopivan laitteen ja maskin löytyminen kesti kohdallani tovin. Laitteeseen tottuminen vei kuitenkin monta kuukautta, mutta oikeat välineet olivat käänteen tekevät. Nukun paremmin, enkä suostu ottamaan edes päivätirsoja ilman laitetta. Olen siis naimisissa tämän härvelin kanssa lopun elämääni. Mutta ei haittaa. Ajattelen, että laite on minun pelastusrenkaani.
Comme je suis président de l'association Stop Apnée du Sommeil Nouvelle-Aquitaine, j'organise des réunions avec les prestataires de services et les médecins, aussi les pneumologues, des cardiologues, et on invite les gens à venir à ces réunions-là, et ce sont des réunions conviviales, et c'est ce qui permet justement de chacun de parler de son cas personnel entre nous et avec les médecins traitants et tout ça. Et on arrive quand même à avoir une solidarité assez forte. Parler de ça, c'est pas une maladie honteuse. Et le gros problème que nous rencontrons, enfin nous ici en France, c'est que les gens, dès qu'ils souffrent d'une pathologie comme la PPC, comme l'apnée du sommeil, ils sortent plus de chez eux. Voilà, disons que ça permet, ces réunions-là, de savoir qu'on n'est pas tout seul. Cette pathologie, il y a quand même 10% de la population française qui est atteinte. Je suppose que c'est à peu près pareil dans les autres pays. Les gens peuvent après en discuter, de ne pas avoir honte aussi quand ils reçoivent du monde chez eux ou quand ils vont quelque part, de se promener avec leur PPC. C'est pas une honte et c'est...
We will continue with the first speaker, Dr. Manuel Sanchez de la Torre, and who is going to be talking about CPAP treatment. Dr. Sanchez de la Torre is a researcher in the Spanish Ramón y Cajal program and scientific director at the Institute of Health Research of Castilla-La Mancha. And he is also an associate professor in the University of Castilla-La Mancha in Spain. So.
Thank you, Tasia. Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me for this nice and stimulating seminars. I will try to share my screen with the presentation. I think I have to share. Please confirm me that you can see the screen. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so thanks so much for this invitation to join to these opportunities to share some of the most important aspects of the first-line treatment for obstructive sleep apnea, the CPAP treatment. As you know, obstructive sleep apnea is a very common sleep disorder breathing, the most common one that is produced by the obstruction of the upper airway. You have the opportunity in the previous session to know about that. It's a very prevalent disease, and we have to be aware about that. And 20% of the adult population have obstructive sleep apnea. We have different risk factors related with obesity, alcohol consumption, more prevalent in male population and also in the aged population. The main symptom is the excessive daytime sleepiness, but it's important to mention that not all the patients with obstructive sleep apnea have a sleepiness, but in some specific profile, the CPAP treatment is also important for this patient without symptoms. This is closely related. You have the opportunity to know about the increase in the probability of having road or labor or work accident and a pure quality of life. The most important aspect of obstructive sleep apnea related also with the consequence, not only the symptom, but also the cardiovascular and metabolic consequence. Luckily, we have a treatment. The first line of treatment for obstructive sleep apnea is the continuous positive airway pressure. This is a device that produces a continuous airflow in the upper airway during the sleep. When we have the suspicion of obstructive sleep apnea, we have different ways to know the patient have obstructive sleep apnea. The most common is a sleep study with different kind of sleep study. And we can stratify on the presence of the probability of having obstructive sleep apnea depending of the number of the events of the patient when it stop breathing during the sleep. In the case the patient have the number of stop of the breathing during the sleep higher than 50 times per hour, we have patient with moderate, and we have more than 30 is a patient with severe obstructive sleep apnea. As I have mentioned before, we have different consequences. The most important, of course, is the symptoms related with the fatigue, with the headache in the morning, with the probability of having a low quality of life, excessive daytime sleepiness. But it's also important to consider that we have different aspects that are also promoted in patients with obstructive sleep apnea, and the deleterious consequence of this disease could promote other aspects related with the deterioration of quality of life or cardiovascular disease, hypertension, cancer, and also the neurodegenerative diseases. As I mentioned, CPAP therapy is the first line treatment for obstructive sleep apnea. Now we have the opportunity to have a very well machines with a very low noise producing a very low number of different disturber aspects related with the use of the CPAP. And we know that CPAP application opens the upper airways and also improve the oxygenation of the patients. And this is a very simple classification of when we have to know if a patient, if you as a patient have to be treated or not with CPAP. Is depending of the number of times that you stop of breathing during a sleep. If you have more than 15 times, 15 events per night during a sleep, you have obstructive sleep apnea, and in this case, you have moderate to severe obstructive sleep apnea. If you have more than 15 apnea-hypopnea index, number of times with the stop breathing during the night, and also you have one of these different aspects related with the disease, for example, excessive daytime sleepiness, altered sleep-related quality of life, and also very important because it has been demonstrated a very close relationship between the presence of obstructive sleep apnea and the risk of having hypertension. So especially resistant hypertension, this is an special profile of patient of hypertension that is very difficult to decrease the normal value of blood pressure. In this profile of patient that having an apnea-hypopnea index higher than 15 and also having the symptoms of other comorbid situation, other risk factor like hypertension, it's important to consider that in this profile we have to apply and to discuss the possibility of use this first line of treatment, that is the application of continuous positive airway pressure. And in this point, it's important to talk with the physician, to talk about the characteristic of the device, to adjust the different parameters of the device, because the pressure of the machine, given this continuous positive airway, the pressure is depending of the obstruction that the patient suffered. So this part of the initial aspect of the treatment with CPAP is quite important to avoid different consequences and different adverse effects related with CPAP. We have a very well documented side effects related with CPAP use that are mainly related with orofacial discomfort, skin irritation. We have also different aspects related with the leaking, the dry of stuffy nose and the dry mouth. But we have the opportunity to adjust which is the best solution to avoid this kind of side effect. We have different device, different brands, but of course we have different kind of mask that fits very well depending of the characteristic of the patient. We have mainly three kinds of different masks related with the CPAP treatment: the full face mask, the nasal mask, and also the nasal pillow, depending of the profile of the characteristic of the patient. But it's very important to talk with the physician looking what is the best solution for each patient. Of course, we are talking with a physician or the provider of CPAP treatment. The point of view of the perspective is like this picture, but we have to be aware that the point of view or the perspective of the patient is completely different, and they can feel this kind of feeling. And we have some example of patients that mimic the CPAP treatment like the movie or the alien movie, but it's a joke. Of course, we had the possibility to contact with our specialist, because after the initial phases of the adjustment and the characteristic of the treatment, it's important the follow-up. We have to be aware that in the sleep unit, in the primary care unit, we have a multidisciplinary team of specialists. That means that you as a patient have the opportunity to ask and you report your problem to very high qualified specialists that they will help you to provide what are the main characteristics and the change that you have to do in the mask if you have some of these kind of adverse effects to avoid the problem. Because I will try to highlight to finish my presentation about the CPAP treatment, about the importance of the adherence and the treatment. In this kind of contact with the specialist, we have to look to improve the adherence, the use of the device, the tolerance, the side effect resolve, and the symptom correction. And in this moment, I want to share with you some of the most common questions that raised by the patient about how many hours a day should I use the CPAP, and also, and it's a very common to the question of should I use it every day? And to try to respond this question, we have to know, like using glasses to the correction to be able to see correctly. We have to use the CPAP daily, and then we have here the number of hours that has been estimated that is needed to use to avoid the main consequence related with obstructive sleep apnea. We have that depending of the aspect that promote obstructive sleep apnea, like hypertension, excessive daytime sleepiness, like the symptoms, depression, the probability of having road accidents, the cardiovascular problem and the risk of having a cardiovascular problem, and other factors related with the deleterious consequence of obstructive sleep apnea. It has been estimated that you have to use the device at least 4 hours per day. That means, of course, this is a minimum, but for some aspect, you have used at least 6 hours per day. This means that you have to use the CPAP every day, and you have to use the CPAP longer as possible. All the numbers of hours that you are sleeping. And I will try to finalize my presentation to look for an example about this point. You can imagine when you go to the beach and you are under the sun and you want to protect your skin to the burn and also for probability of having cancer, in the melanoma cancer, and we can the possibility and the solution to use the sunscreen. And if you go to the beach the first day and you use the sunscreen, you are protected. Okay, and if you go the next day and you don't use the sunscreen, it doesn't matter that you use the day before. In this day and in this moment, you are not protected of the consequence of the exposure to the sun. So, of course, we know that we have to use the sunscreen should be used every day of sun exposure to ensure continuous protection. For CPAP, should also. So it's important not only providing the treatment, it's important for you patient to be aware that you have to use the CPAP as many hours as you are able, and every day is important to use the CPAP to avoid the consequence. So at this point, you have any adverse effect, you have any problem, contact with your specialist, and they will give you advice to improve the adherence and the comfort using the CPAP. So thank you very much for your attention. It will be a pleasure to respond any question.
Thank Manuel. I like to introduce the next speaker. is Professor Dries Testermans is going to be looking at some alternative to CPAP. Professor Testermans is the clinical head of the Department of Respiratory Disease at the University Hospital in Leuven in Belgium. Dries?
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and also thank you for the invitation. I try to share my screen. I'm not sure whether it works. Do you see my slides moving?
Yeah.
We do, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I will talk shortly about some alternative treatment options to CPAP to treat sleep-disordered breathing, mainly obstructive sleep apnea. And if we talk about treatment of obstructive sleep apnea, we should also talk about the aim of our treatment, because we can aim at different outcomes for different patients. So it depends on the help request of the patient. So sometimes we aim for adequate symptomatic control. Sometimes we would like to normalize the AHI. And in other patients, we mainly treat to prevent comorbidities or to improve life expectancy. And here you can see a list of possible choices or therapeutic options that we can choose from, and we can also combine them to try to treat patients with obstructive sleep apnea. And you see at the top lifestyle recommendations, I will come back to this. Of course, we can try to treat underlying comorbidities, but I will not talk about this. Positional therapy is an option for some of the patients. We already heard about positive airway pressure treatment. And then we have oral appliances that can be used, surgical techniques, and some pharmacological agents that are emerging that could also help us for specific patients. And if you would like to offer these different treatment options to our patients, we really need a multidisciplinary approach involving several specialists, but also other caregivers like psychologists, nurses, and so on. So with regard to lifestyle recommendations, we can say to the patient that he should try to avoid or use as less alcohol as possible, because this will increase the time that you wake up when you have an obstructive event during sleep. Adequate sleep hygiene is important, so patients should have sufficient sleep, appropriate sleep timings, and avoidance of sleeping pills if possible. Exercise can be helpful. Of course, exercise training in general is important for a healthy lifestyle. There are some emerging data on training of upper airway muscles to treat obstructive sleep apnea, but the evidence is still very limited. And then, of course, cessation of smoking is important for each patient or each smoker, and weight reduction can be important for patients who have obesity or overweight. And here on the left, you can see a line demonstrating the relationship between the change in your weight or the body mass index and the change in the number of respiratory events. And you can see that usually or in general, a decrease of the BMI, the body mass index, by approximately 20% leads to approximately 50% reduction in the number of respiratory events. So weight loss can help you to decrease the severity of obstructive sleep apnea. However, weight loss or weight reduction is usually used in combination with specific OSA treatments, because weight loss, if you do it properly, takes a lot of time. The results can be highly variable between patients. Regular follow-up is required if you treat a patient with weight loss for his obstructive sleep apnea. And we also know that respiratory events or obstructive sleep apnea can recur even if it is initially improved by weight loss. Positional therapy can be used for patients having positional obstructive sleep apnea, meaning that you have a lot or more respiratory events when you are lying in the supine position compared to lying in the side position. And positional therapy aims at avoiding the supine horizontal posture, allowing the patient to sleep in a horizontal, non-supine body position. And in the past, these tennis ball technique methods were used, but we know that there is a problem with adherence or compliance. Less than 10% of patients continue to use these devices after approximately 30 months. So nowadays we have some other vibrating devices like neck or chest-worn vibrating devices that seems to work a little bit better, and the compliance seems also to be a little bit better. And positional therapy can be considered in patients who snore or have mild to moderate positional obstructive sleep apnea, or severe positional obstructive sleep apnea if other treatments fail or if CPAP pressure is very difficult. Of course, it's not advisable to use these devices or positional therapy in patients with painful conditions that preclude them from sleeping in non-supine positions. Mandibular advancement devices or oral appliances can be used as first-line treatment mainly for snoring, mild and moderate obstructive sleep apnea, and for severe obstructive sleep apnea, again, as second line or if CPAP is not tolerated. So these devices move the jaw and the tongue forwards, increase the diameter of the upper airway, and reduce the collapsibility or the collapse of your upper airway. Ideally, these devices should be custom made by a qualified dentist because this has clearly shown to improve the adherence and compliance and minimize the side effects that can occur. And it should be a titratable device, meaning that there is a screw or something that can adjust the position of your lower jaw. Potential contraindications to prescribe a mandibular advancement device to a patient are insufficient number of healthy teeth, extensive disease, periodontal disease, a limited mouth opening, and some problems with your temporomandibular joint. If you have pain opening the mouth, then this could also be a possible contraindication. If we compare the efficacy of CPAP, positive airway pressure, and a mandibular advancement device, then in general, CPAP will reduce the number of respiratory events more than a mandibular advancement device. However, if we look to other outcomes like excessive sleepiness or daytime functioning, then it seems that the effectiveness of a mandibular advancement device is almost equal to CPAP device. With regard to compliance, there are also issues. Here are some numbers of different studies, and you see that after 2 to 4 years, only 50% of the patients are still using their mandibular advancement device. If we look to efficacy there, this seems fairly stable. So these devices work up to 10 years and can lower the AHI in an efficient way. Side effects that can occur are pain at the temporomandibular joints or sometimes salivation problems, and on the long term also tooth movements with shifts in dental occlusions can occur. Then a few slides about surgical techniques. Upper airway surgery can be used mainly in patients with snoring, mild or moderate obstructive sleep apnea, and then more extensive surgery like maxillomandibular surgery, advancement surgery, or bariatric surgery in severe obese patients can be considered in eligible patients with severe obstructive sleep apnea. And I will not go into detail, but many surgical procedures of the upper airway are possible. We know in general that nasal surgery, like septoplasty or increasing the diameter of the nose only, will not lead to a very significant improvement of the severity of obstructive sleep apnea. But other techniques like some oropharyngeal surgeries or hypopharyngeal surgeries, for example, tonsillectomy in patients with very large tonsils, can significantly decrease the number of respiratory events. This is the maxillomandibular surgery where both the upper and the lower jaw are moved forward and you increase the diameter of the upper airway. And this seems to be highly effective with success rates more than 80% even in patients with a very high number of respiratory events, but it's quite invasive surgery. So it's very invasive for patients. And bariatric surgery has already been mentioned. If we perform or want to evaluate a patient for surgical techniques, then we should do a diagnostic workup, which includes imaging of the upper airway and also some video endoscopy of the upper airway during wakefulness or during sleep. And we know that actually sleep apnea in the majority of patients is caused by multi-level collapse, meaning that you should also perform surgery on different levels of the upper airway, and that only performing surgery at one specific level will not completely cure most of the patients. Hypoglossal nerve stimulation is a quite new treatment option that is getting reimbursed in more and more countries. And in this treatment option, we will stimulate with a kind of pacemaker the hypoglossal nerve. And by stimulating this nerve, the dilator muscles, so muscles that open up the upper airway, will be activated and the tongue will move forwards during stimulation. So here at the top, Inspire is one kind of device. You also have the Genio device here at the bottom. So at the left, you see some figures from studies from the Inspire device, and you see also some patient characteristics that belong to this study. So meaning that nowadays in most countries, reimbursement for this device is limited to patients having a body mass index of lower than 32, with a number of respiratory events between 20 to 50 per hour. And the video endoscopy of the upper airway should also exclude a specific pattern of collapse, but I will not go into detail. You see that approximately 66% of the patients that were included in the first main trials responded to this treatment, and there was also a long-term control of the number of respiratory events in these responders. But we need definitely more data and more studies to further learn about this new treatment option. And then I would like to end with pharmacotherapy. This is a new and emergent treatment option that is possible for selected patients having specific characteristics. For example, we now have new drugs that can stimulate wakefulness, and these can be prescribed in patients who have residual excessive daytime sleepiness despite a good treatment of their underlying obstructive sleep apnea. But of course, we should first rule out other comorbidities or other comorbid sleep disorders before we prescribe this kind of drug. We now have new drugs that can help you losing weight, but there are also some drawbacks with these drugs, so we will not prescribe them, of course, in every obese patient. And then there is a lot of research going on specific drugs that, for example, can stimulate the upper airway muscles and increase the diameter of the upper airway. But I will not go into detail. This is work in progress, and hopefully this leads to new treatment options within the near future. So this is something I would like to mention to conclude. Instead of having a diagnosis of obstructive sleep apnea based on the number of events per hour of sleep and then prescribe positive airway pressure for all our patients, we know that it will be important in the future to also take other patient characteristics into account, like maybe information about your genes, information about the specific ways how sleep apnea is induced in a specific patient, information on other clinical characteristics, and based on all these combined information, we could make a treatment option, or we could select a treatment option for this specific patient, which is more precision-based, or which give more precision-based care to the patient. So this is my last slide, just to conclude what I have already said, and I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dries. Thank you, Dries. I think Manuel should be here somewhere in order to answer several questions, if Luca agrees with me. Yeah. And I will sum up some of them. And I will begin with Manuel, that some patients are asking when to check the pressure of their CPAP if everything is fine, or if and when they should check the oxygenation, the oxygen levels during sleep, when I think when they have their CPAP probably, and how often they should do that.
And this point, I think, is the most important is the indication of the treatment, the titration, the preparation of with the physician about the characteristic of the pressure of the CPAP should be done to adjust the exact pressure that the patient have to receive. In this point, it's important to know that some devices have automated way to adjust the pressure depending of the level of the obstruction of the patient. So if you have an auto CPAP that regulates itself, the pressure of the device is not necessary to evaluate how to change, if it's necessary to change the pressure of the device. Otherwise, in the follow-up visit, when your physician or your nurse, it's important to check if the device have any problem, if the pressure is still is the correct. And of course, I have read also a question related with with the side problems of the asbest effect, if you feel that you have leaks in the mask, if you feel that you have any trouble, any problem using the device, and you have to check every day if you have any of this kind of problem, you have to contact with your physician or your nurse. It's important to feel comfortable using the device that you have to use every day, as I mentioned. So if you feel that something is wrong, you have to contact with your sleep unit or your specialist.
We have one question for Dries. I think it's good for Dries. What do you think about mandibular advanced device? Do you collaborate with dental specialists like orthodontists, or would you consider collaborating with them to provide to patients suitable for that type of treatment for sleep apnea or patients that cannot withstand the CPAP apparatus?
Yes, as I mentioned, the multidisciplinary approach is very important for the sleep lab, and I'm absolutely convinced of the benefit of working closely together with a dentist who actually has experience or has got education on the fabrication and the measurements and evaluation of patients with obstructive sleep apnea and the treatment with mandibular advancement devices. So in our hospital or in our center, we work closely with even 2 or 3 dentists that have this kind of education and this kind of experience. And I believe it's very good to also to improve the compliance and the adherence with these kind of treatments, because there is also an issue with adherence and compliance also for these treatments. So it's very important to collaborate closely with the dentist, yes.
Yeah, we have one question open. I think interested. How can community pharmacists screen, identifying and refer patients at risk of OSA and help prevent and delay of diagnosis, the community of the pharmacists? What do you think? Or Dries or Manuel?
This is for Dries.
Well, it's not common in my country, in Belgium, that pharmacists are involved in the screening for patients with obstructive sleep apnea. So we are working out at the moment, actually, in our country, a new pathway for the care of sleep disordered breathing patients. And we believe that the general practitioner should play a central role in this pathway, as he or she already does in many countries. But in Belgium, it's still the sleep specialist who does the main diagnostic work. But in my opinion, it's more important that the general practitioner who knows the patient best, in my thinking, and who can take into account the whole history and the medical history and the symptoms and complaints of the patient, and then can decide whether he wants to perform a sleep test or not, and then refer to a sleep specialist to discuss and interpret these data. That would be, in my side, the best option.
Yeah, I think also the future, the artificial intelligence help to screening. Also, for example, I want to share this news from the Council of New York started a 3 years program to screening all the New York population for sleep apnea. It's 9 million people. This is good idea to involve large number of people, because we need to make prevention, because the problem in the future, we are now 1 billion, maybe in 10 years we are 1.5 billion.
Yes.
Also, for my part, as a patient association, is important to make prevention on the children, because this is the first line of prevention.
Yes.
Athanasia, if you want to help me to choose some question.
I think again for Dries. I'm sorry, Manuel.
No, much better.
It's I'll make a summary of the question. Is when will you refer a patient to a surgeon, because most of the sleep specialists apply CPAP, and patients just have this question: when should someone have a referral to a surgeon?
Yeah. Well, it's not an easy question to respond in a few seconds or a few minutes, but I believe that in surgical techniques, mainly upper airway surgery with exclusion from the really invasive surgery like maxillomandibular surgery, I should refrain this mainly for patients with snoring problem or mild to moderate obstructive sleep apnea without very severe symptoms, because there is a lot less data or evidence that these surgical techniques can improve the severity of obstructive sleep apnea. And of course, there are specific patients that respond very well to specific techniques. But it's not always easy to predict which patient will respond to a certain technique. Of course, if you have very large tonsils, then a tonsillectomy will help you. And specifically in children, we perform many tonsillectomies for this reason. But for the other patients, I believe that if you have severe obstructive sleep apnea or moderate obstructive sleep apnea with severe symptoms, then CPAP is the primary indication for treatment, with mandibular advancement devices for moderate sleep apnea also being an option, I believe. But then a surgery comes a little bit further in the pathway.
And what about the combination of different treatments? Because the patient said that he or she used the mandibular device and also CPAP in order to lower the pressure. Or other patients of ours if they go for a weekend, they use the mandibular device because it's smaller and easier to move. Or if you can combine, say, a surgery and positional treatment, or mandibular device and positional treatment.
Certainly, I think this is a very good option for specific patients, and we need more data also and more research on this topic. I know that there is a very recent paper published that evaluated the co-treatment with mandibular advancement devices and a CPAP device, and the patients could choose when they would use the one device, the mandibular advancement device or the CPAP, and this led to a higher compliance of OSA treatment. So it can be useful. The problem is, of course, that reimbursement of two treatments at the same time is not always possible in many countries. So this is another issue that should be taken into account.
We have one question to Manuel. Please, can you comment on whether there are any development in implant for OSA which can be used alongside other implant, like implant cardioverter defibrillator or pacemaker?
I'm not sure if we have different definitive information about that. I think this kind of different alternative of treatment is highly depending on the profile of the patient, as mentioned, right? The first line is the CPAP treatment, but we have to be aware that depending on the profile of the patient, we have to use other alternatives. And in this point, this surgery alternatives could be a good option, but for very specific profile of patient. And in this point, I want also to comment that the most important is not to abandon the treatment. That I mean that if the patient don't feel that they can use the CPAP, before abandon the treatment, you have to do the consultation with your specialist and look for alternative. And a combination, and some of the patients refer that use of the mandibular advancement device combined with CPAP treatment and make that lower pressure can be used with the CPAP. And these kind of combinations have to be adjusted to the specific profiles.
Maybe Athanasia, we have time for another question.
I was thinking of a question that I think it may be interesting for the patient about the new medication about losing weight that are also used for diabetes. And I think that they're now very up to date. What do you think? And I think also patients would be really interested about that, because they are used for many patients now, even if there are some indication about patients with sleep apnea in several countries. So if we have time, if we clear.
We have Matteo Siciliano, who's coming on later to talk about medications. So he will cover the different medications available.
Sorry, I don't see anything. Thank you.
Okay.
So I think perhaps one more question and then we'll go to the break.
No, that's the question.
I think one question from Adzel. What is meant by restorative sleep? Is this deep sleep or just any sleep?
Manuel?
I'm not sure interpretation what you mean about restoration of the sleep is the field that you are.
Restorative sleep.
Restorative sleep is to avoid the consequence of having a poor quality of sleep. Sleep healthy is a pillar of health. If you feel uncomfortable, you have headache, and you have symptoms related with excessive daytime sleepiness, the probability of having an inadequate sleep is very high. So the restoration of the sleep is the possibility to have a normal situation during the day, to be conscious, to be with all your capacity, mental capacity, of course, and to avoid the excessive daytime sleepiness.
So welcome back, everyone. We move now on to the third session of this meeting. And this session will look to future innovations in sleep and breathing disorders. And it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Matteo Siciliano, who is the early career member representative of Assembly 4 of the ERS. And he is a pulmonologist based in Rome and has a long-standing passion for respiratory sleep disorders. And he will talk about some future innovations for sleep breathing disorders. Matteo, you can start.
Thank you, Luis, for the introduction. I share my presentation. Well, let me thank the ELF before starting. Thanks to the ELF Sleep Advisory Group for the kind invitation to this first Sleep and Breathing Patient Conference. And thanks also to the audience for being here today. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the newest ways doctors can diagnose and monitor sleep and breathing disorders, the latest medicine that are available, and some of the clinical trials that are happening right now. I also give you a quick look at how telemedicine and artificial intelligence or smart computer technology are helping shape the future of the healthcare. So let's start by looking at the newest ways doctors can diagnose and monitor sleep and breathing disorders. In the last few years, there have been many new devices and digital tools made to track your sleep without being invasive. These new tools have the potential to make it much easier to find and diagnose sleep problems. Some of these tools are already being used by doctors, while others are still being developed. Most of these new devices fall into three main groups, three categories. Wearables, so things that you can wear like smartwatch, smartbands, rings. Nearables, devices that are placed near you when you sleep. And hearables, devices that measure the air around you via video or audio recording. So there are also new ideas being testing, like, for example, pills that you can swallow or some sensor, intelligent sensor into your clothes that can help track your breathing when you sleep. However, these options are still in an early stage of development. There are many smart devices available that promise to track your sleep, and more are coming into the market. As you can see here, they have some benefits, but also limitation too. However, if you think you may have a sleep problem, it is best to see a doctor and to get tested with the approved medical devices instead of relying on consumer sleep home tests. So to move on to new medicine being developed to treat sleep apnea, recent research has led to new drug treatment that look promising. Some of these medicines are still being tested, but they could change the way we think we treat sleep apnea. In the future, this option might make it possible to find treatment that are better suited for each person, especially for those who don't do well with standard treatment, like, for example, CPAP therapy. So it is well known that obstructive sleep apnea has many causes and works in a complex way. Some people, for example, may have a throat that closes more easily during the night, during sleep. Some people may have a weak airway muscles or light sleep that leads to frequent awakenings or an irregular breathing patterns. Researchers have shown that certain medication may help by targeting this specific mechanism. So this could open the door to a more personalized treatment for people with sleep disorder breathing. Well, the Food and Drug Administration, the United States agency which makes sure medicine are safe and effective, recently approved a new medicine called tirzepatide. Tirzepatide is a medication originally made to help with type 2 diabetes and weight loss. This is the first medication approved specifically for sleep apnea. Tirzepatide helps by lowering appetite and consequently food intake, which leads to weight loss. Studies have shown that along with weight loss, this medicine also helps reduce the number of time breathing stops during the sleep, as known as apnea or hypopnea events. So who is tirzepatide for? Adults who have moderate to severe obstructive sleep apnea, who have also obesity with a body mass index greater than 30 or higher, and who are looking for a non-surgical option to help improve sleep apnea symptoms. Regarding side effects, in particular gastrointestinal ones, are usually worse when first starting the dose or during the escalation dose. So doctors often start low and go slow to help your body adjust. So tirzepatide is not recommended for people who obviously have a certain gastrointestinal problem yet, or are allergic to tirzepatide of any of its ingredients, and who are pregnant, women are pregnant or planning to become pregnant. Well, it's fair to say that tirzepatide is not a cure for sleep apnea, but it could be a powerful tool, especially if weight is a major component, a major factor of your condition. And it's always best to see a doctor or your sleep specialist to see if it could be a good fit for your personal healthcare goals. Researchers are currently testing new medication to treat sleep apnea. Here in this slide, some promising examples. The Mariposa study tests two drugs, atomoxetine and oxybutynin, that may help keep the airway muscles more active during sleep by stopping them from the collapsing too easily during the night. After 1 month, it helped reduce breathing pauses during sleep in people with mild to severe OSA. It also helped to reduce daytime tiredness and sleepiness. Longer studies are now looking how it works over 6 months and one year period. Sultiam, a drug used for epilepsy, was shown in an international study to reduce sleep apnea symptoms up to 50% over 12 weeks. People taking Sultiam had fewer breathing interruptions and a better oxygen level while they slept. So moving forward, we examine the last section, telemedicine and artificial intelligence. Telemedicine is a way to get healthcare using internet or electronic devices without going to the hospital. For people with, for example, obstructive sleep apnea, it allows test and care to happen at home. So this can make it easier for people in remote or low-income areas to get help, reduce hospital visit and consequently additional costs. This can also help patients stick to treatment like home ventilation and let doctors give you support in real time. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine also supports using telemedicine to help diagnose and treat obstructive sleep apnea at home. Telemedicine is obviously a promising way to create a more personalized and digital healthcare, but it is important to make sure that this digital progress doesn't leave anyone behind, especially people who are not able to using this kind of technology. Telemedicine is, of course, a great option, but it should be just one of the many ways to take care of patients. To conclude, we are entering in an exciting era where artificial intelligence is transforming sleep medicine. It's helping diagnose and treat conditions by analyzing the sleep study and predicting risk based on several factors, like, for example, age, sex, and weight. Artificial intelligence also supports a more personalized treatment, improving patient outcome and a long-term adherence by tailoring care to individual needs. So that bring me to the end of my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Matteo. Now we start the Q&A, but I have also one question to Matteo. What kind of data do wearable devices collect during the sleep?
Well, wearable devices like smartwatch, smartband can collect several data. For example, heart rate, breathing rate, and also blood oxygen levels and movements. So algorithms and machine learning combine these several data can predict also the pattern of the sleep and the different sleep stage. However, it's fair to say that only devices that are proven and are cleared by FDA could did this kind of sleep pattern and sleep stage. Not all the consumer devices, for example.
Okay, thank you. Dries, can you help me to?
Yeah, maybe an additional question in the same trend. There is a question from Federico Giordani. I was wondering how AI could improve OSA diagnosis.
Well, artificial intelligence can look, for example, at sleep results more faster and accurately than humans. And data from literature have shown that there are some specific pattern we can detect from, for example, cardiorespiratory polygraphy that could be related to specific endotype and intrinsic characteristics of patients. So probably in the future, the artificial intelligence could detect these specific characteristics and also suggests a personalized treatment covering these all these endotype patterns.
Okay, thank you.
We have also one question for Rodriguez. How Ozempic compares to tirzepatide in terms of GI effect? Can somebody who is nintedanib for ELD use any of the previous weight loss medication?
Well, actually, to my own, I don't think there are a lot of studies that compare these two drugs. The most frequent side effects for the tirzepatide is gastrointestinal ones. In the SURMOUNT-AUSA study, these side effects cover about 70% of people, but is just in the starting with the starting dose of these drugs. I don't know if Dries or other have some information about the comparison of this hepatide and also other drugs that that could be lowering the apnea-apnea index, but I don't think so.
No, I don't have any complete information on gastrointestinal side effects related to the comparison to the tirzepatide and Ozempic. I know, but we know that tirzepatide, of course, reduces weight much more than compared to Ozempic in general, according to the studies. Yeah.
Now, we don't have maybe even another question for Matteo. Could experiment drugs for OSA replace CPAP in the future? What do you think?
Maybe in the future, there are a lot of clinical trials that are ongoing, and we know that CPAP is just a therapy that prevents the collapse of the airway. So is not CPAP doesn't solve the problem underlying the obstructive sleep apnea. So probably this the new medicine that are ongoing could be covered this mechanism, and yeah, probably definitely in the future this medicine could replace CPAP. Yeah.
Yeah, also as a patient advocate, I think it's a good moment because we have some new possible therapy like pharmacotherapy, but also we have the physician have the new art for excessive daytime sleepiness. Now, more and more the research is very important because the patient have more option to the treatment. Also the treatment of the comorbidity.
Yeah, also for the symptoms itself, and not only for the causes that leads to obstructive sleep apnea.
Can I maybe have another question maybe for you, Matteo? You mentioned these new diagnostic techniques with nearables and other new devices, but these have already been around for some years now, these new devices, but they seem to get not a lot of access to the clinical field because we still don't use a lot of these devices. What do you think are the main hurdles to be overcome that we could use these devices in clinical practice more?
Well, you know, these devices are most of them are consumer devices, not medical approved. As a clinicians, we probably these devices can help the patient to be aware about their condition, and we can use these devices to improve our clinical practice, our daily clinical practice, and to ask the patient about some information about your sleep, your pattern sleep. And but it is well known that if patient have a sleep breathing problem, it is necessary to get tested with an approved medical devices and not consumer. So consumer devices could be could aware the patient about his condition, but not beyond other information.
I think also that the new future is the digital therapeutics. We speak about the application, the app, but many digital therapeutics need like medical device regulation, need the certification in the Apple Store, in the store for Google. Is not certificate, is not therapy. We have two interested questions. What do you think, Dries? From Dimitrios.
What is your opinion about patients having problems with sleep disorders and myasthenia gravis patients? What treatment would you recommend as most suitable? Matteo, do you want to respond? Or?
Well, about myasthenia,
yeah,
patient with well, you are the expert on neuromuscular disease. Well, probably in this kind of patient there is a sort of other problems like hypoventilation. So probably the apnea or hypopnea events are not the main problems, but there are other problems like restrictive disorders, like in the neuromuscular disease, that could lead to an hypoventilation. So probably we can think beyond the CPAP, and we could think about, for example, a B-level machine or other sort of therapy.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I believe, of course, it's again specific to a specific patient. You can have a patient in the acute phase who has hypoventilation, but if then he is well treated and he is under good control with his neuromuscular disorder, it may be not necessary. There is no necessity to continue even the treatment. So it depends really on the situation and the individual patient for this disorder.
We have another question from Anna. Given that menopause often results in muscle tone reduction, is hormone replacement potentially or assistant in perimenopausal women?
Well, it is well known in literature that progesterone and female hormones are protective for obstructive sleep apnea. And probably, yeah, the lower tone of the upper airway muscles is one of the components that brings the percentage of the sleep apnea equal to men and women. And I don't know if the replace therapy could have a positive effect on the muscle function.
Okay. Brice, what do you think? We have another question maybe for the previous session, but I think is interested. As pressure mentioned by Professor Schilza, could you badly impact in people affected by other pathology like ELD or COPD? What do you think has to be done to implement OSA diagnosis in those people? Do you know if efficacy study on the no therapy available was already conducted or will be conducted on those people?
Yes, of course. The presence of obstructive sleep apnea could badly impact also these patients, especially patients with COPD, interstitial lung disease, like it can badly impact all patients with suffering from severe obstructive sleep apnea. What do you think has to be done to implement diagnosis in these people? I think we should be having a good awareness of the possibility that these patients with COPD, interstitial lung disease, and other respiratory disorders also suffer from sleep disordered breathing. And if we have a suspicion of sleep disordered breathing, we should do the proper testing to diagnose these patients. And with regard to studies on efficacy of treatment, yes, there are several trials over the last recent years, mainly in cohort studies that have shown that if you treat obstructive sleep apnea with CPAP in these patients, that the outcome for these patients seem to improve. So they have less exacerbations, they have an improved survival and less cardiovascular comorbidity. So this is indeed already, there are some studies available.
We have time for one last question. Matteo, how can artificial intelligence improve or risk the diagnosis of sleep apnea, sleep disorders?
Well, I said before, artificial intelligence can read and can look at sleep results much faster than humans, and probably more accurately. So artificial intelligence can also find some patterns that may help doctor to suggest the better therapy for each kind of patient.
Okay. Thank you. What do you think, Claire? We start the closing.
Yes, I think we can start the closing messages now, Luca.
Okay. Thank you, Dries. And now we are coming to the end of our day, and we really hope you have enjoyed it. found it useful, again, and helpful insight info sleep and breathing disorders. We'd like to ask you a final poll question. After today's event, how much knowledge do you have about sleep and breathing disorders? We start a poll. Yeah, very interested. 29% al 0.8, 16% al 7 to 5, and 12% al 9, and 10 external knowledge is 8%. Perfect, thank you. Dries?
Okay, so you can keep in touch with us through the links on this slide. You can sign up to the ELF newsletter and get involved by emailing us and engage through social media. And you can also find information on sleep and breathing disorders on the ELF website. So from my account, I believe this was an excellent meeting discussing several important aspects of sleep disordered breathing. And maybe I would like to summarize some take-home messages. We discussed the importance of the increasing awareness, both in the general population, but certainly in the medical work field, to improve diagnosis and treatment of many patients suffering from sleep disordered breathing. We had an excellent talk on sleep disorders, sleep disordered breathing, and the risk of drowsy driving. We had a talk on treatment of positive airway pressure, which still is a very important and effective treatment modality for many of the patients. But we also saw that the field is moving and should further move towards personalized care, taking into account the needs and the help requests and characteristics of individual patients. And at last, we saw that future treatment options are emerging, and we should work hard to get some of the promising treatment options to our clinical patients and to our clinical practice, and to all of you, to our patients suffering from sleep disordered breathing. So, Luca, for the final words.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, especially to speakers, members of Sleep Patient Advisory Group, the ERS Assembly for members, ELF staff team behind the scene, and everyone who helped to promote the events, and to everyone who joined us today. Reminder that the tools will be recorded. A short feedback form will be sent out to everyone who registered for the event, and we're also putting the link to the survey in the chat. Please complete it and let us know what you think. Goodbye.